What's up, y'all? Sparty here. So, for this video, I want to talk about the LG G8 one more time. And this is mainly due to the fact that, one, it's been over a year that I have had the phone and that it's been out. Two, this is apparently the G8 series is the last G series line of devices that are going to be made by LG. The Velvet's replacing that, so they're going more, I guess, upper mid-range instead of having two flagship phones, which I personally feel is all right, but it's pretty sad because the G2 was my first LG phone, and I've been basically rocking I've had every single G series phone, but I haven't had every single V series phone. I didn't touch the V50, but in terms of the G series, it's pretty much been the phone I've always went to in terms of like an overall really good experience, especially in a smaller footprint. And to me, that's something that I'm definitely gonna miss out of like a phone from LG. And it kind of sucks that they're getting rid of it, but I can completely understand why. So I guess overall, how the phone has been for over a year is before I cracked my screen, and for whatever reason, when you crack a screen, the phone performance decides to go like kind of downwards. Like this has happened with pretty much every phone that I've cracked the screen with. My V20 got like very bad in terms of like its performance to the point where I can only really use it for certain things. And my G8, while I can still use it for stuff like gaming and like all that stuff, no problem. It just it just like it stalls like way more than it did beforehand. So I guess I'll talk performance pre, cracked screen a little bit and then go into how it is now. But overall, it's been a really nice phone to use as like it's not even a secondary phone. It's kind of a tertiary phone. I have too many phones to call something a secondary phone. Whereas my V60 is the phone that I use for basically everything. I don't even have another phone in my pocket anymore. It's just the V60, which the past 3 years has kind of been something that I've not done. I've always had at least two phones on me, but Okay, G8. Let's talk about the build. Now, despite the fact that I cracked the screen and it was totally my fault, it wasn't the fault of the phone. This phone is beautiful. It's a really nice looking phone. This platinum gray is a really nice color. It's like every single time you go to a phone and you see like press photos and you see photos that are like on say a T-Mobile or a Sprint website, colors look muted and they don't look attractive at all. Like for example, the V30, in its cloud silver color, it just looked white. I did not like the look of it. Just looking at just looking at T-Mobile website photos. But when I got the phone, it was easily one of my favorite colors of a phone since like the G6's what do they call it? Ice Platinum, where it had that brushed metal finish on the back, even though it was glass, and it looked very nice. People always say LG phones look dull, and I guess from it does look like a basic phone, right? But one thing that LG did that no other manufacturer even tried to do is that there's no camera bump on the G8, and there's no camera bump on the V50. So for those two phones, at least, you have a flush camera on the back. The only real problem I can see with that is that it'll be easier to scratch both the camera lenses and the back glass. But overall, I really haven't had any problem with it. There's no scratches from what I can see. No, not really. There isn't. And the back glass has held up very well. It does still have mil standard 810G drop shock and weather resistance, so you don't really have to worry about that. I mean, you do obviously because it's glass, but you'll have to worry about it less, and I think that's a very nice touch. And I'm glad that LG stuck with that with the Velvet too, where it still has mil standard 810G. So that's something that I feel more manufacturers, and I made a video about this, but more manufacturers need to take into account and actually do, because if we're gonna keep having these glass sandwich phones, I feel we definitely need some sort of sense of security when it comes to dropping our phones when we don't have a case right away. And to me, that's just something that LG has done pretty well. And you also get a 2-year warranty as well with these phones. All you gotta do is register it through their site, and you'll just have the 2-year warranty. So whenever you have some sort of issue, you'll have that as well. Let's talk about the display. So the display is obviously cracked, but it's a Quad HD OLED display. And I said this in my I said it in my V60 review, where I'm like, LG's OLED displays have come a long way since even the V30, but definitely since the G Flex 2. And it's like, comparing it to like my Note 10, I wind up using my well, not my G8 now because the screen is cracked, but before it was cracked, I winded up using the G8 more for a lot of content consumption and playing games and all that stuff. Way more. Even though the speakers are a little bit better on the Note 10, the only real thing that I would say the G8 is just that the screen just looks better. Like, they're as bright as each other. Like, neither the Note 10 or the G8 get as bright as, say, the V60, for example. But they're bright enough for me personally, especially in sunlight, to where I don't think it's that big of a deal to have it be like, oh, it's 1,000 nits. Like, it doesn't really matter anymore. But yeah, the display is still really nice. I don't have any sort of issues like screen burn-in, or color shifting is not really an issue that I've seen on this phone. And I really haven't had any like real typical OLED issues yet. So that's something that is very nice. And like I said, LG has come a long way from that. Let's talk about performance. Now, obviously, I alluded to the performance being a little bit bad. Well, or not bad, but worse now. But overall, it's still a really fast and quick phone. It still does a lot of tasks that I wanted to do well. It still has like thermal cooling and stuff like that. So when I get into gaming, I'll talk about that. It'll not get as hot as, say, like a OnePlus 6T, where you're doing a lot of like hefty tasks and stuff like that. And it's just like the phone is still the Snapdragon 855 in this phone is still a really blazing fast phone. In terms of, like, say, cell reception and performance, Wi-Fi, I've never had any sort of, like, Wi-Fi drops or anything like that. Aside from, like, the obvious where it's like, oh, overall it's just an outage in the area. But the phone itself, comparing it to when I had an iPhone XS and comparing it to this, the G8 blew the iPhone XS out of the water when it came to just staying connected and having efficient power draw when it comes to being on Wi-Fi and using it day after day, right? Or hour after hour. And it's like, it's just a really good phone overall in terms of like its performance still. The 855 doesn't slow it down, but while the 865 is definitely a jump up and it feels good, I wouldn't necessarily say the 855 is a slouch. This phone, for example, is just really good, and I guess I'll just get into gaming now. When it comes to games like Marvel Contest of Champions, and I guess I'll just boot it up now, where it's still the only phone I have where it'll play Marvel Contest of Champions at like a smooth 60 frames per second. Obviously, it'll drop because games drop frames, but the V60 doesn't do it. The Note 10, which has the same processor, doesn't do it. The OnePlus 6T doesn't do it. Oh, and of course they're down for maintenance. So I can't really show you, but I've discussed it before on this channel, and it's just something where that game is like probably the best on this phone for me personally, and it just plays well and it plays smooth, and that's just something that's really good. Other games though, like say King of Fighters All Star, plays really well on here as well. The Seven Deadly Sins Grand Cross game plays well on here too, and especially for the size of this phone, for that being a portrait mode only game, you can get up to the top of the screen no problem and hit stuff like, stuff up there, and you obviously you have to do some gymnastics to get over here to where the back button would be or something like that. But overall, it's still a really nice experience in terms of gaming overall. And it's no slouch if you want that. And thermal cooling definitely helps with that. Obviously, when you're on a hot day and you don't have air conditioning in your place or something like that, your phone will get really hot. Like the hottest this phone has got is 61 degrees Celsius, and that's in this room where there's no air conditioning at all. I basically just have to go off a fan. But say when I'm at my apartment or something like that, the highest it gets is like 55. Whereas the 6T will always go up to the 60s. So that's just something that's really nice. And I'm glad LG still has thermal cooling in their phones, because it's just something that is really appreciated. Let's talk about audio. Now, audio is something LG has been pretty, in terms of corded audio, and even like Bluetooth, is still pretty much the kings at, I would say. They support every audio codec under the sun in terms of Bluetooth, and they have the Hi-Fi Quad DAC in all their phones except the LG Velvet and their lower tier phones, right? The G8 is still a really good phone. This is back when it had when they were still doing master quality authentication, where they had, all these different authentications for stuff like Tidal, and like it had DTS:X 3D surround sound, and it just has like a lot of really good stuff, and it was tuned by Meridian. This phone is still really good when it comes to corded audio. I have no problem using my short tapes, my Sennheiser HD6XXs, which are just HD650s, just tuned differently, or my 10P1s, which all you really got to do is like remove one earbud from like the cord, plug it into the phone, and then plug the monitor back in, and it'll just trick the phone into going into external audio mode, and it'll get more power out of that, because planars are very difficult and very sensitive to drive and stuff like that. So that's just something that you'll have to deal with. The only thing about this phone in terms of audio I'd say is not amazing is the speakers, right? And that's something, say, the V60 really improved upon, where the G8 is kind of, I wouldn't say lackluster. I'd say it's about a 6 or a 7, 8 on a really good day, depending on what you're watching. And I would definitely say that having the DTS:X 3D surround on definitely helps with that, because it'll just make a lot of stuff sound wider, and it definitely punches up the audio a little bit in terms of volume, but it's not something that I would say they're not the best speakers in the world. And to me, that's the bummer about the G8 in terms of audio, and that's something that LG definitely improved upon with the V60. I don't know about the G8X or like say the V50, but in terms the G8 in particular, since it has an in-display speaker, it's not really gonna wow you if you want, say, a room-filling speaker setup in terms of like a phone. It still has boombox, which the G7 still has the best boombox. Closer to that is the V40, but it's still here. It's still noticeable, but it's not as like wow. It's not as wowing as, say, the G7 or even the V40. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up there. So where would that bring me now in terms of like talking about the G8 overall? And would I say get this phone? Yeah, I definitely. Oh wait, no. Sorry, I forgot to talk about battery life. Um, Sorry, it's hot and it's messing with my brain. But battery life on here is actually pretty solid. It has a 3,500 milliamp hour battery. Has quick charge. It does support quick charge 4, and I can get like 4 to 5 hours of screen on time on here, no problem. And compared to something like the Note 10, which I can only really push to 4.5, it ekes out just a little bit more, and that's to the point. And that, to me, that's enough to where I'd be like, yeah, this is a phone I would definitely say is worth it in terms of battery life. Quick, it charges up in like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, and it does have an optimized charging mode so that it doesn't overheat your battery, so that the longevity of the battery is definitely, you know, taken into account. But still, I feel that it's overall still a pretty good phone in terms of battery life. It's no V60, but it gets the job done, and I feel that's more than enough. So what would that bring me to this other stuff like call quality and stuff like that? I can't really test that in terms of like, say, using the phone app. I would have to do it through like, say, Hangouts or something like that. And overall, I think it's solid. Obviously, you're not going to get no HD calling features since this is a Sprint locked G8. I can't test that, and that's kind of unfortunate. But it's in terms of like doing it through like Google Hangouts or something like that. It sounds good. It sounds good enough, and it's just something that I feel I would advise you maybe use like a Bluetooth headset or something like that if you want to have decent enough call quality and not have the phone to your face. I don't like the phone to my face anyway, and I barely call. So it's not a metric I would go off of for me personally. But for those who care, there you go. So what did that leave me with the G8? I'm keeping this phone most definitely. I'm gonna get the screen fixed because I need to. It's $250, but to me that's worth it. That's like literally the amount I paid for the phone. So that to me that's kind of, it's fine, right? And it's sad that the G8 is the last G series phone to be made. I hope they would have done a G9, but I understand why they're doing this, why they're pivoting to more like an upper mid-range with like the Velvet and stuff like that. And since the V60 may also be the last V series phone, whatever will replace the V series will be their flagship. So I understand why LG is doing it, but it's just sad because LG with the G series brought a whole lot of things to the table that nobody ever talks about, right? And it's just sad that their phones after the G3 never really kept that trajectory. Like the G2 is probably their best selling phone, and that just sucks, man. But yeah, this is part of the thing, guys, for watching. Thanks for support. Let me know if you have a G8 in the comment section below, or say a G8X, or any of the 5 different variants of the G8 that are out there. Let me know in the comment section below what you feel about it. Like the video if you like it, dislike if you dislike it, share with people that are interested in this sort of content. Thanks for 800 subscribers. I really do appreciate it, and have a good one.